Hi everyone, my name's Jenny and I'm back with another video. Today I'm going to be doing the Build a Book tag. So this tag was originally created by Leanne at Literary Diversions. I'll put a link to her tag in her channel down below to celebrate the launch of her Patreon, which I'll also put a link down to below. And then I originally saw this tag by Olive at a Book Olive, so I'll put her version of the tag that she did a couple weeks ago in the description box below as well. So when I saw Olive do this tag, I thought it looked really fun, and so I thought it would just be a fun short little video to film. So the idea of the tag is to create a kind of Frankenstein-esque book based on the following questions about things that you really like in books, with examples of like that trope or that character done really well in your opinion. So let's just get started. The first question is genre. What is your favorite genre and what is a book that does that really well? And for me, my favorite genre is a really quiet literary fiction novel where big life events happen, but it still feels very kind of quiet and insular. And I think the best example of this is probably my favorite book of all time, which is The Namesake by Jupitery. She writes kind of everyday life and these big events, and how even during a big event the little things are the things that really matter, just so beautifully. And this follows the story of Gogol, who is a young boy born in Massachusetts to immigrant parents from India, and follows his life as he kind of struggles to feel more American and as he struggles to connect with his Indian culture. And I just absolutely love this book. It feels very quiet, even though a lot of big events happen, given that this covers Gogol's entire life. So yeah, really, really phenomenal book. Definitely a really good example of my favorite genre. Another one that has this trope is Normal People by Sally Rooney, another one of my absolute favorites. And this, again, has this really quiet nature to it, where not a lot is happening, but these people are undergoing like big transitions in life. Editing Jenny here. This is a video from several weeks ago that I'm just now getting around to editing and posting, and I'm realizing that I may not have been as clear as I wanted to be, but I did want to also just give a like description of what Normal People is about in case you have missed it. So Normal People is a novel that basically follows these two characters, Marianne and Connell, as they experience kind of a relationship over the course of their like last years of sixth form, is that what it's called? I can't remember. Like the last years of their kind of like K through 12 standard education, and then they go off to university, and kind of how the roles that they play within the relationship and kind of within greater society transition due to their wealth, as well as kind of their popularity, given the like different social situations. So I absolutely love this novel, and I think the transition specifically that I think this novel talks about is the transition from like living at home to like going to university and kind of becoming a young adult person, which is also a transition, but is pretty substantial. But I think this book is much more about the kind of everyday occurrences. Those two are kind of the example of the genre that I'm going for here. The next question is main character. So who would you want to pull from a previous book that you've read and have a whole new book about them? And for this, I'm going to go with Grace, who's one of the sisters in The Most Fun We Ever Had by Claire Lombardo. So Grace is probably the character that we see the least in this. She's the baby of the family. She's just graduated from Reed College out in Oregon, and is kind of struggling to figure out what she wants to do with her life. And we follow her at times as she kind of navigates this tale of like telling her parents that she is going to go to law school when actually she's not going to law school. And I just really liked her. I liked how her guilt about not being truthful with her parents was portrayed, while also showing that she didn't actually feel that guilty about it because she didn't want to go to law school. I thought that was really well done. I guess I enjoyed reading the flawed decisions that she makes in this book, and I think watching her grow more as a character in a new book would be really, really fun. The next question is side character. What is a character from a different book that you would like to see as a sidekick to your main character? And for this, I'm going to go with another character who makes a lot of mistakes over the course of the novel, and that is Tess from Sweetbitter. This book I read back in 2016, really, really loved. Tess is a very, very flawed character. She's just moved from Ohio, I believe, and she's moved to New York City. She wants to become a writer, make it big, and so she joins a very fancy restaurant as one of their wait staff. She's technically a backwaiter, so the person that brings the food to the table, and she kind of makes her way up the wait staff at this very fancy restaurant, and she makes a lot of really bad decisions. She gets in to a crowd that is really not very good for her, and I think the two of them would help each other grow in really interesting ways and would get along like surprisingly well. So that is my sidekick for Grace. And then the next question is trope. So what is a trope that you can't get enough of? For me, this is the narrator telling the story from a later point in time. So by the time that the narrator is telling us the story, the entire story has concluded, and they have this sense of that they know more of the story than they maybe are letting on, which I have two examples of. The first of which is one of the OGs, Nick from The Great Gatsby. Obviously this is all told in that Nick knows what's going to happen at the end of the book, but even at the beginning of the novel. And I just really love this book. This is, again, one of my favorites. Really, this whole tag is just me combining all my favorite books into one mega book, which I think is what it's supposed to be. So, but throughout the course of the novel, we can sense that Nick knows something is going to happen, but we as the reader don't know what's going to happen. And I love that in a book. I love having the narrator tell us the story in the exact way that they want it to be told. This is also done really well in The Secret History by Donna Tartt. In this novel, Richard begins with a prologue that says that he is going to tell this story, and that something terrible has happened, but we don't know what it is, and we kind of watch as chaos ensues. And I just loved that Donna Tartt, especially in this one, really crafts Richard as this kind of mistrusting narrator who definitely has things that he doesn't want to tell us, or he wants to tell us at that perfect moment. And so not entirely sure how this is going to fit with Tess and Grace quite yet, but it is a trope that I absolutely love. The next is plot twist. So what is a novel that had a really good plot twist in your opinion? And I actually don't love plot twists in my books. I much prefer a book that's more like the journey as opposed to the destination. But I do have one that had a really emotionally heart-wrenching plot twist, like twist being the operative word, and that's Station 11. I don't want to give this one away, and I also just want to point out that this is probably not the best time to read Station 11, but this is, again, one of my absolute favorite books, and if you've read this book, you know that the scene with the man arriving to the airport, it kills. It literally kills. So I think the emotional capacity that like twist has, and that poignant realization, is something that I really love in books, and would love to see in my book. So potentially there's some realization that happens, and the way that it's drawn out in the book is just like perfectly emotionally in tune with the rest of the narrative. The next is relationships. So what type of relationships do you want to see in your books? And for this, I was debating whether or not I wanted to have a love interest. I do love romances, but this felt more like a literary fiction novel on the kind of depressing side. So I decided to go with friendships instead. And I think the friendships that I'd want in my novel are similar to the friendship dynamics in The Interstings by Meg Wolitzer. I love the friendships in here. I love that this is a group of people that don't really have a lot in common, but have some instance in their life that has brought them together. And because of that, there is this loyalty and solidarity between them, sometimes to the detriment of themselves and to other people. I find that dynamic really interesting. And I also find that the characters in here, particularly, I think Ethan would be a really interesting, especially as the younger Ethan. They end this book around their like 40s, but back when they're like in their 20s alongside Tess and Grace, I think he would add a really interesting dynamic to their friendship. And I think the way friendship is discussed in this book is something that I would want to have in my own novel. Or the next question is villain, who is going to be the main antagonist in your novel. And for this, I think I'm going to go with the older man whose name escapes me. He's the writer in The Last Book Party by Karen Dukas. I'll put a picture right here. And while he's not a villain at all, he doesn't have malintent necessarily. I think the idea of a particularly woman in her like mid-20s having a relationship with this older man when both of them know it's not really good for them, but the older man still has power in the situation, is a really interesting dynamic, and I think something that both Tess and Grace would like fall privy to. So I think that could add a really interesting complex plot point within my novel. And then the final question is ending. What is a book that has a perfect ending, or what kind of ending do you most like in your books? And for me, I have to go with something like, I'll think of it all tomorrow at Tara. I can stand it then. Tomorrow, I'll think of some way to get him back. After all, tomorrow is another day. I.e. Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. So obviously this is a hugely problematic book. There is a lot of racism in here. There's a lot of classism. There's just like a lot of negative stuff happening. However, it is still an incredibly crafted story. One that is just remarkable and really just packs such an emotional punch. And I think the way Margaret Mitchell ends this story particularly is just so well done. It ends on such a hopeful note after everything that Scarlett O'Hara has been through. She still is able to look to the future. And we get such a satisfying conclusion to her story and Rhett's story. And we don't know what's going to happen next to Scarlett O'Hara. But that's kind of the beauty of it, is that these characters will continue to live on, but they're having hope at the end of their narrative. And I think that's what I really enjoy the most in a novel, is a novel that ends somewhat open-endedly. Like the characters are going to continue living on, but we have concluded this element, this part of their life. And this part of their life is all that we really get to know. So that is my Build-A-Book tag. I guess to sum it all up, we have two young 20-somethings who meet somehow through extraneous circumstances and also have a collection of other friends who they are very close with. Perhaps maybe they all went to a summer camp together, or perhaps Tess also went to Reed and they all became friends there. An older man becomes involved, which is to the detriment of our main leading ladies. And it's a quiet novel, but it's hopeful. And something important has happened in the past that our narrator is taking us through that story. But by the end we know that everything's gonna be okay. Yeah, that sounds like a great novel, and I would be happy to read it. Okay, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my channel and are looking to see more videos from me, please do subscribe. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you next time.